You weren't a hero, just a stubborn old man with a cane and a limp. That's what the officer thought when he saw you sitting alone on the bench, the morning sun glinting off the silver in your hair. You wore your history quietly, deep-set eyes, a jaw that never quite relaxed, and a faded army jacket stretched across your broad shoulders, the left sleeve a little looser where the muscle never grew back right. The pigeons gathered at your feet, pecking at breadcrumbs you scattered with a steady, practiced hand. In that moment, you were just another face in the park, until the shouting started, and everything changed. If you agree that respect is something every veteran deserves, like and subscribe, because what happened next will remind you why we must never forget the sacrifices made by those who served. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday. Families played on the grass, joggers circled the pond, and you, Sergeant Henry Hank Miller, sat in your usual spot, quietly feeding the birds. Your cane rested against the bench, a battered old thing with a brass tip worn smooth by years of use. You watched the world with the same wary patience you learned in the jungles of Vietnam, where every sound could mean danger, and silence was a friend you trusted more than most people. You didn't notice the officer at first. He was young, tall, and wore his uniform like armor, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting a world he didn't really see. Officer Brent Lawson, they called him, new to the force, eager to prove himself, and already known for his short fuse. He strode across the grass, boots crunching on gravel, his gaze fixed on you as if you'd broken some unspoken rule just by sitting there. "Hey, you can't feed the birds here," he barked, voice echoing across the park. A few heads turned, but most people looked away. No one wanted trouble. You glanced up, met his eyes, and nodded, gathering your breadcrumbs into the paper sack. "Didn't you hear me?" he snapped, stepping closer. "I said, you can't feed the birds here." You tried to explain, voice quiet and steady, but he cut you off. "Rules are rules, old man. Get moving." He reached for your cane, yanking it away before you could stand. Your leg, still stiff from the shrapnel that never quite healed, buckled, and you stumbled, catching yourself on the edge of the bench. The pain was sharp but familiar, a reminder of things you'd survived long before this day. That's when it happened. The officer, frustrated by your slowness, kicked your wounded leg, hard, deliberate, a flash of anger behind the badge. You gasped, collapsing onto the ground, the world spinning as pain shot up your side. For a moment, everything went silent. The pigeons scattered, the children stopped playing, and the park held its breath. A young woman nearby screamed. Someone started recording on their phone. A jogger rushed over, kneeling beside you, his voice trembling with outrage. "You can't do that. He's a veteran." The officer stepped back, suddenly aware of the eyes on him, but his face stayed hard, jaw clenched tight. You lay there, clutching your leg, memories flooding back, dust and blood, the roar of helicopters, the faces of friends you hadn't seen in decades. But this was different. This was home. And here, you were supposed to be safe. 8 minutes. That's how long it took for the world to change. Someone called 911, not for help, but to report the officer. Word spread like wildfire. The old man on the ground was Hank Miller, the same one who'd been honored at City Hall last year, the one whose shadow box, filled with medals, ribbons, and a letter signed by a general, sat in the local museum. A testament to a life spent in service. You weren't just a lonely old man with stories. You were a living piece of history, and now, everyone was watching. As the sirens wailed in the distance, the crowd grew. Some stood in silent solidarity, others whispered angrily, and a few knelt beside you, offering comfort and support. The officer paced nearby, radio crackling at his belt, his confidence slipping away with every passing second. And then, to the sea of faces, the mayor arrived. She didn't hesitate. She knelt beside you, her hand gentle on your shoulder, her voice steady and clear as she turned to the officer, badge and gun. Now, the crowd erupted in applause, relief, and justice mingling in the morning air. But in that moment, as you looked up at the faces gathered around you, you realized something had shifted, not just for you, but for everyone who'd ever felt invisible, overlooked, or forgotten. Your story wasn't just about pain or injustice. It was about the power of community, the importance of standing up, and the reminder that respect is never owed, it's earned, every single day. And as the mayor helped you to your feet, the crowd parted, and the sun broke through the clouds, you knew that your shadow, your legacy, would never be boxed away again. 8 minutes. That's all it took for a quiet Saturday morning to become the center of a city's outrage. A moment that would ripple far beyond the park's leafy borders. As you lay on the grass, pain radiating from your wounded leg, The world seemed to shrink to the circle of faces around you. The jogger who'd rushed to your side, the young woman clutching her phone, the officers shifting nervously as the crowd swelled. The hush that followed the violence was heavy, punctuated only by the distant wail of sirens drawing closer with every heartbeat. The bystanders' shock turned quickly to anger. Some had caught the entire incident on their phones, and within minutes, the footage was already spreading through group chats and social media feeds. "He kicked a veteran," someone shouted, their voice cracking with disbelief. "He's a hero, what's wrong with you?" The officer, who only moments before had seemed so sure of his authority, now looked small and uncertain, his hand twitching at his belt as if searching for a script that no longer fit the moment. You tried to sit up, but the pain in your leg, old shrapnel, never fully healed, made you wince. The jogger helped you, his hand steady beneath your elbow. "Don't move," he said quietly. "Help is coming." You nodded, grateful for the kindness, but your eyes never left the officer. You saw the fear there, the dawning realization that he'd crossed a line that couldn't be explained away by policy or protocol. This wasn't just about park rules anymore. This was about respect, about dignity, about the invisible wounds that so many carried beneath their faded uniforms and battered canes. The crowd grew. People who'd ignored you all morning now stood in a loose semicircle, their faces tight with concern and outrage. Some recognized you, Sergeant Hank Miller, the man who'd spoken at last year's Veterans Day ceremony, who'd survived things most could barely imagine. Others saw only an old man in pain, and that was enough. "We called the mayor," someone said, voice trembling with urgency. "She's on her way." The officer's radio crackled, but he barely responded, sweat beading on his forehead as he realized the gravity of what he'd done. Within minutes, the mayor's car screeched to a halt at the park entrance. Mayor Lisa Grant, herself the widow of a Marine, strode across the grass, her face set in grim determination. She didn't hesitate, didn't stop to ask questions or wait for explanations. She knelt beside you, her hand gentle on your shoulder. "Hank, are you all right?" she asked, her voice low but steady. You nodded, managing a tight smile. "I'll live. I've had worse," you said, the old humor flickering in your eyes. Then she turned to the officer, her voice ringing out so everyone could hear. "Officer Lawson, you are relieved of duty. Hand over your badge and weapon." The crowd gasped, a collective exhale of relief and vindication. The officer's hands shook as he complied, the badge and gun heavy in his palms. "You're done here," the mayor said, her words final and unyielding. Paramedics arrived, checking your leg and helping you to your feet. The crowd parted for you, some clapping, others reaching out to squeeze your hand or pat your back. The jogger who'd helped you stood close, his eyes shining with respect. "Thank you for your service," he said, voice thick with emotion. For a moment, you saw not just gratitude, but a kind of awe, the recognition that you were more than just an old man on a park bench. News crews arrived, their cameras capturing the aftermath. The mayor addressed the crowd, her words broadcast live across the city. "This is not who we are," she said, her voice strong. "We honor our veterans. We protect our citizens. And we hold our officers accountable." Her words rippled through the crowd, settling into the hearts of those who'd witnessed the morning's events. Later, as you sat in the back of the ambulance, the pain in your leg dulled by the paramedics' care, you watched the officer being led away. You felt no triumph, only a deep, aching sadness for him, for yourself, for every veteran who'd ever been overlooked or disrespected. But above all, you felt a surge of hope. The community had stood up. The city had listened. And justice, for once, had come swiftly and publicly. That afternoon, the mayor visited you at the hospital. She brought flowers and a promise, new training for officers, a review of department policies, and a public ceremony to honor your service. "We can't change what happened," she said, "but we can make sure it never happens again." You nodded, grateful for her resolve. As the sun set over the city, you realized that something fundamental had shifted. You were no longer invisible. Your story, painful as it was, had become a catalyst for change, a reminder that respect must be earned and defended every single day. And as you drifted off to sleep, the shadow box of medals and the general's letter waiting for you at home, you knew that your legacy would live on. Not just in ribbons and plaques, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed the power of a community standing up for what was right. The days that followed the park incident became a turning point, not just for you, but for the entire city. News of what happened spread quickly, thanks to the bystanders' videos and the mayor's swift, decisive action. For once, the story wasn't buried or brushed aside. It was front-page news, the kind that forced people to stop and ask themselves what kind of community they wanted to be. The mayor's words echoed across television screens and social media. We honor our veterans. We protect our citizens. And we hold our officers accountable. The crowd's applause that day wasn't just for you, but for the idea that dignity and justice could still prevail. The officer who kicked your wounded leg was fired before the sun set, his badge and weapon surrendered in front of the same crowd he tried to intimidate. It was a rare and public reckoning, one that sent a message through the ranks of the police department and beyond. Abuse of power, especially against those who had already sacrificed so much, would not be tolerated. The police chief announced a full review of department practices, promising new training in de-escalation and respect for veterans, a move that drew cautious optimism from the community and a sense of vindication from those who had witnessed the incident. In the days that followed, you received more visitors than you had in years. Neighbors brought meals and cards. Veterans from every branch stopped by to shake your hand or share a quiet word. The mayor visited again, this time not just to check on your recovery, but to ask for your help. Would you be willing to speak at the city's new officer training program? She wanted recruits to hear firsthand what respect and service really meant, not from a textbook, but from someone who had lived it. You agreed, and on the day of the first training, you stood before a room of young officers, your cane steady in your grip, your voice unwavering. You told them about the meaning of sacrifice, about the invisible wounds that linger long after the battle's end, and about the power of a single moment to change a life for better or worse. Some listened with polite detachment, but most leaned in, their eyes wide as they realized the depth of what you had endured and what you still had to teach. The city honored you at a public ceremony in the park where it all began. The new bench, inscribed with your name and the words "in honor of all who served," became a gathering place for veterans and families, a living reminder that heroes walk among us, often unnoticed until the world is forced to see. The mayor's promise was kept. The officers' firing was just the beginning. Policies changed, training evolved, and the city's commitment to its veterans became more than just words on a plaque. You never sought revenge, only respect. And in the end, that's what you received, not just from the city, but from a nation watching, reminded that justice is possible when good people stand together. Your story became a lesson, a warning, and above all, a beacon of hope for every veteran who ever wondered if their sacrifices still mattered. And as you sat on that new bench, the sun warm on your face and the laughter of children ringing through the park, you knew that, at last, you were truly seen.